The distress beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a scream. Captain Ethan Cross had been running cargo for 6 years, and he knew better than to answer random calls in the outer drift. But something about this one felt different, urgent, desperate. When he reached the coordinates, his breath caught. A massive galleon-class vessel lay, shattered across an asteroid field, its crimson sails torn to ribbons by what must have been a brutal ion storm. Debris floated everywhere, glinting in the distant starlight. "Any survivors?" he muttered, scanning the wreckage. That's when he saw her, a figure trapped beneath a collapsed mass section, her arm reaching weakly toward the void. Without thinking, Ethan maneuvered his shuttle closer, engaging the magnetic grapples. He suited up and went EVA, his heart pounding as he worked to free her. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen. Her features were sharp and elegant, with fox-like ears that pressed flat against her head and a thick tail that seemed to move even unconscious. Her skin was pale, contrasting with the deep crimson of her torn captain's coat. Battle scars crossed her arms, telling stories of countless fights. Ethan dragged her aboard, stripping away her wet outer layers as the shuttle's medical bay hummed to life. She was breathing, but barely. He worked quickly, applying regenerative patches to her wounds, watching his color slowly return to her face. Her eyes snapped open suddenly, bright amber, fierce, and calculating. Before Ethan could react, she'd grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Who are you?" Her voice was rough but commanding, carrying an accent he couldn't place. "Ethan Cross. I found you floating. You saved me." It wasn't a question. She sat up slowly, assessing him with an intensity that made him step back. "What's your name, human?" "I just told you. Your full name. Title. Ship registry. Ethan Cross, independent cargo hauler, shuttle wandering star." He frowned. "Look, you've been through trauma. You should rest." She laughed, a sound both beautiful and dangerous. "Rest? You pulled the queen of the crimson tides from the void, merchant. Do you understand what that means?" Ethan blinked. "Queen? Of what?" She stood, moving with predatory grace despite her injuries. The medical gown did little to hide her athletic form, curves and muscle in equal measure. She circled him slowly, and Ethan found himself frozen under her gaze. "I am Roxana Voss, terror of 6 systems, commander of 12 vessels, undefeated in 43 battles." She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of gunpowder and exotic spices on her skin. "And you, Ethan Cross, just saved my life." She reached up, fingers trailing along his jaw. "Which means by the ancient laws of the tides, everything you own now belongs to me. Starting with this ship." Ethan stumbled backward, his mind reeling. "Wait, what? That's not how any of this works." Roxana smiled, revealing slightly pointed canines. "It's exactly how it works. By saving my life, you've entered into a blood debt. My honor demands I repay you by claiming everything as my own until the debt is satisfied." "That's insane," Ethan protested, running a hand through his dark hair. "I saved you because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted to become your what exactly? My subject. My possession. My responsibility." She moved closer again, backing him against the medical bay wall. "Don't worry, merchant. I take care of what's mine." Her hand pressed against the wall beside his head, caging him in. This close, Ethan could see flecks of gold in her amber eyes, could feel the heat radiating from her body. Despite the absurdity of the situation, he found his pulse quickening. "There has to be another way," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. "Oh." Roxana's tail swished behind her, a clear sign of amusement. "What do you propose, Ethan Cross? How does a simple cargo hauler think he can negotiate with a pirate queen?" He swallowed hard, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "You need a ship. I have a ship, but I also need to make a living. What if we work together? Just until you can contact your fleet. Work together." She seemed to taste the words, her eyes never leaving his face. "You mean you'd let me stay aboard? As your what? Passenger? Partner?" Ethan heard himself say. "Temporary partner. You clearly know your way around ships in combat. I could use someone with your skills. And in return, I help you get back to your people." Roxana was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made him feel transparent. Then slowly she smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her entire face from dangerous to devastating. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Ethan Cross." She leaned in closer, her lips nearly brushing his ear. "But I like it. Very well. I'll agree to your partnership. For now." Before he could respond, she pushed away from the wall, leaving him breathless. "But understand this, merchant. I may have agreed to work with you, but this ship is still mine by right. You just get to pretend you're in charge." She glanced back over her shoulder, her tail curling playfully. "Consider it a kindness." "I need to check our course," Ethan muttered, escaping to the cockpit. Behind him, he heard Roxana's low laugh. What the hell had he just agreed to? As he settled into the pilot's seat, he caught sight of her reflection in the viewport. She was examining his quarters now, making herself at home with the confidence of someone who truly believed she owned everything she touched. This was going to be complicated. 3 days into their partnership, Ethan was beginning to understand why Roxana commanded such fear and respect. She moved through his ship like she'd been born on it, optimizing routes he'd used for years, identifying weak points in his security systems, even improving the engine efficiency by 15%. "You've been flying this bucket with a misaligned thrust vector for months," she said, emerging from the engine room with grease on her hands and satisfaction in her eyes. "It's a miracle you haven't burned out completely." Ethan looked up from his navigation charts. "That bucket has kept me alive for 6 years. Barely." She wiped her hands on a rag, then perched herself on the edge of his console. Too close as always. "You're good, Ethan. Better than most merchants I've encountered. But you're holding yourself back. Playing it safe. Safe keeps you breathing in the outer drift. Safe keeps you small." Her tail wrapped around his wrist, soft fur against his skin. "You know what I think? I think you're capable of so much more. You just need someone to push you." He met her gaze, seeing the challenge there. "And you're volunteering for that job?" "I'm already doing it." She slid off the console, moving behind his chair. Her hands settled on his shoulders, kneading the tense muscles there. "You're tighter than a supernova waiting to explode. When's the last time you actually relaxed?" "Hard to relax when a pirate queen has claimed your ship," he muttered, but didn't pull away from her touch. Her fingers were skilled, finding knots he didn't know he had. "I prefer the term privateer queen," she corrected, her voice amused. "And I haven't claimed it yet. I'm still deciding if you're worth keeping. Should I be flattered?" "Definitely." Her hands moved lower, tracing the line of his spine through his shirt. "Not many people interest me, Ethan Cross. You're different. Honorable. Brave enough to save a stranger, but smart enough to negotiate rather than fight. It's refreshing." He turned in his chair to face her and found her closer than expected. "Roxana, I received a transmission from my fleet," she said quietly. "They've located me. They can be here in 4 days." Something twisted in Ethan's chest. That's good news, is it?" She tilted her head, studying him. 4 days, Ethan. Then I return to my war, my crown, my responsibilities. And you return to your quiet cargo routes, alone in the black. That was always the plan. Plans change." She reached out, fingers tracing his jaw like that first day. "I'm starting to think I'd rather stay here. With you. But that's not possible, is it? You have your life. I have mine." "Roxana." She kissed him then, fierce and demanding, swallowing whatever protest he might have made. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and Ethan found himself responding with equal intensity, all his careful control shattering under her touch. They stumbled to his quarters, a tangle of desperate hands and heated kisses. Roxana's claws, retractable, he discovered, traced patterns down his back as he worked the clasps of her borrowed clothing. She was all lean muscle and soft curves, scars telling stories across her pale skin. "You're sure about this?" Ethan breathed against her neck, his hands spanning her waist. "I've never been more sure of anything." She pulled his shirt over his head, her amber eyes darkening with desire as she explored his chest with curious fingers. "Stop thinking, merchant. Just feel." So he did. He lifted her onto his bunk, settling between her thighs as she wrapped her legs around his waist. Her tail curled around his arm, soft and warm, as her lips found his again. The kiss deepened, hungry and urgent, years of loneliness and duty forgotten in the heat between them. Ethan traced the curve of her hip, the indent of her waist, memorizing every detail. She arched into his touch, a low purr rumbling in her chest that made his pulse race. When he finally joined with her, claws dug into his shoulders, her head thrown back in pleasure. They moved together in a rhythm as old as the stars themselves, finding solace in each other's bodies. Roxana was fierce and demanding, taking what she wanted while giving just as much in return. Ethan matched her intensity, discovering a passion in himself he long suppressed. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers running through her copper hair. Her ears twitched at his touch, and she made that purring sound again, content and satisfied. For days, she whispered into the darkness. I know. He tightened his arm around her. We could have longer. You could stay and abandon my people. My fleet. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him with sad eyes. I'm their queen, Ethan. They need me. The war isn't over. Then let me come with you. The words were out before he could stop them. You said I was wasting my potential out here. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm meant for something more. Her expression softened, one hand cupping his cheek. You don't understand what you're asking. My life is violence and danger. Constant battles, impossible odds. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you. But it's okay if something happens to you. I've been fighting my whole life. It's all I know. Then let me show you something different. He pulled her down for a slow, tender kiss. Let me show you what it's like to have someone watching your back. Not as a subject or a crew member. As an equal. As more. Roxana searched his face, vulnerability flickering in her fierce eyes. You'd give up everything. Your freedom. Your peaceful life. For you? Yes. The transmission came exactly 4 days later. Roxana's fleet, 12 ships bearing the Crimson Tide insignia, emerged from jump space in a display of coordinated power that made Ethan's shuttle look like a child's toy. Impressive, he murmured, standing beside Roxana on the bridge. That's just the Vanguard. She stood tall in her restored captain's coat, salvaged and repaired from the wreckage, looking every inch the legendary queen. But her hand found his, fingers intertwining. Last chance to change your mind, merchant. Once you set foot on my flagship, there's no going back to your simple life. I've never wanted simple. He squeezed her hand. I want extraordinary. I want you. Her answering smile was radiant. Then welcome to the Crimson Tides, Captain Cross. The transfer to her flagship was ceremonial and efficient. Her crew, a diverse mix of species and backgrounds, watched with curiosity as their queen returned with a human in tow. Whispers followed them through the corridors, but Roxana silenced them with a single look. In her quarters, vast compared to his shuttle, decorated with trophies from countless victories, she finally let her composure slip. She pulled him close, burying her face in his neck. I'm terrified, she admitted quietly. I've never let anyone this close. Never trusted anyone with my heart. I'm terrified, too. He stroked her hair, feeling her relax against him. But we'll figure it out together. She looked up at him, amber eyes shining. Together. I like the sound of that. They sealed their new partnership the way they'd sealed the old one, with heated kisses and desperate touches, learning each other's bodies all over again in her vast bed. This time there was no urgency, no ticking clock. They had time now. All the time in the universe. Later, as they lay wrapped in each other, Roxana traced patterns on his chest. You know the laws I mentioned? About blood debts. Yeah, I made them up. At his shocked expression, she grinned mischievously. There are no ancient laws of the tides. I saw something in you that first moment. Something I wanted to keep. So I claimed you. Ethan laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. You're unbelievable. You love it. She kissed him softly. Besides, it worked, didn't it? You're mine now. My partner. My equal. You're what? My heart. She said it simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. You saved me, Ethan Cross. Not just from the wreckage. From a life of loneliness. From believing I had to face everything alone. He pulled her closer, feeling complete for the first time in years. Then I guess we saved each other. Outside, the stars wheeled through the darkness, and the Crimson Tide's fleet prepared for their next adventure. But inside, in the Queen's quarters, two souls had found their home. Together.